Hello, everybody. My name is Dave Palamar. This is Financial Literacy for Veterans and Service Members. This is part 4 of 5 parts. Tomorrow is going to be the last part. Today is budgeting. So, just to give everybody a quick background here, well, that's uh, that's me. That's who I am. I served in the Army. I was in the armor. That is an M1 Abrams tank. I was actually in the Army a long time ago. They were coming out, but they weren't deployed very broadly across the service. So I used M60A1s. Before we start here, I'm going to go through a little disclaimer. I know what I'm talking about. I'm trying to help you. My intent is to advise and assist. I have the proper degrees, and I spent over 30 years working in the financial markets, but this is a charitable offering, and I will not be held liable for any inaccuracies, or if anyone does something I say and it doesn't go the right way. You should verify things that I say, even though they're accurate. So I'm giving you this material as a volunteer, and I'm not suggesting that I have sanctioned license to teach as a teacher of this. This is things for you to think about. And as I said, I do know what I'm talking about, but I will not be held liable. Thank you. So here we go. This is budgeting. A little background for me. So I'm a veteran. I served 35 or more years ago. Actually, I come from a military family. My mother, father, aunt, 3 uncles, brother-in-law. We all did a tour across the various services: Army, Navy, Marines. Nobody was in the Air Force. We're all too old for that. My dad did not graduate high school. I come from a working family. I applied to one college. I actually didn't even want to apply to college. My mother pushed me. I thought I was going to be a cop or a plumber or something like that. That's the kind of people I grew up with, which is wonderful. The heart of America. Anyway, I didn't know anything about any of this material. This is even into my early to mid 20s. This was very foreign to me. I had no idea about financial literacy, had no idea about the financial markets and budgets and this and that. Budgeting is near and dear to my heart. Of the 5 parts, while savings and investment, I guess, is my favorite, budgets are really close favorite too. My budgeting began in 1982 when I'm sitting on the floor of my apartment with my roommates in Radcliffe, Kentucky, which is the town outside of Fort Knox. That's where Armor used to be. I guess it's in Fort Benning these days. I took a notebook, a spiral notebook, no less, and I had started to receive bills in the mail. And I said, well, now I guess I have to pay these things, and I guess I kind of want to get organized. It was really that basic. And I wrote 15 on the top of the page on the left side, and in the middle on the left side, I wrote 30 and underlined them both. Then I started to list the bills that came at around the 15th of the month. Now, remember, if you get a bill on the 15th, you don't have till the 30th to pay it. So let's just say it's the bills that are due no later than the 15th. So they might start arriving on the 8th or something like that. But everybody's situation is specific to them. Some bills are monthly, some bills, like insurance or something, might be quarterly. Different bills come at different times. If you listened to the banking and credit sessions, well, actually, if you listen to all the sessions, it's pretty good material. I talk about having automatic drafts. I talk about having your checking account or your paycheck deposited directly to your banking account. This is important for a number of reasons. This is important because this is what society wants. This is not telling you what to do, but this is what, financial identity in today's economy, that you want to have a financial footprint. It's prudent to have your check deposited to the bank directly rather than get a check in your hand that you could lose or could be stolen or you could spend. Not to say you don't have discipline, but it happens. And, when you go to borrow money, they're going to want to see that you have a bank account and this and that. But there's a couple other reasons too. When you have the check to go to your bank, you can set an automatic draft. And that automatic draft can pay things like your car payment or something like this. And it's especially useful for monthly payments that are the same amount each month versus things that are variable, like your phone bill would be variable depending on the calls you made. I suppose your cable TV bill, if you happen to do that, would be variable in case you bought a pay-per-view show or something. But maybe younger people don't do that. Who knows? Anyway, you list your bills, and that's where budgeting starts. You list the bills that come in and are due on the 15th. You list the bills that are coming and due on the 30th. Oh, and by the way, what I didn't, the other gigantic thing I said about having your paycheck deposited directly to your bank account is that you can set up an automatic withdrawal that doesn't go to pay the bill, but it goes to deposit into an investment account. Excuse me. So let's take a look here. This is only 2 slides uh, in this conversation, this presentation. So let's talk about budgeting. We're going to go through a sample budget, and what budgeting really is monitoring your flow of funds. That's how money comes in to you, to your household, whether it's you or spouse, kids, you or you plural. Money comes in, money goes out. You review it frequently, you revise it frequently. Because I'm an old man, I used to do it in pen and paper. Now I'm a modern guy and I do it on an Excel spreadsheet, and I save it as it needs to be. The essence of budgeting is that you have to spend less than you bring in. And the very first bill that you pay is to pay yourself. The very first bill that you pay every time you pay your bills is your contribution to your investment account. So you just have to figure it out. And we talked about credit cards. If you are living on a credit card to meet your monthly expenses, and what I mean is that you pay your electric bill, you keep the lights on, you pay your water bill, you pay your internet and stuff like that. But you go out for dinner, you go out to a movie. If on a monthly basis, the money that you handle or that you receive from your paycheck, if your bills and costs exceed that, I'm not your dad. I'm just telling you, you're aiming for a situation that's going to be problematic. You simply have to cut down the spending, or of course earn more. But earn more doesn't mean that you accommodate your spending habits. Earn more really should be you want to save more. So I don't have a violin out, not looking to generate any tears, but I'll tell you, I had a negative net worth until I was 36. And that's not because I was a gambler or an excessive spender. I talked about in the credit section, there's really only 2 things you borrow money for. You borrow money for a place to live, and the amount of money has to be within your means. You can't buy a fancy, super expensive place that you can't afford to maintain and to pay the mortgage on. It's got to be within your means. And the second thing you borrow money for is schooling. And if you go to a stinky school and get stinky grades, you kind of wasted your time. You should go to the best school you can get into, which there's no evaluation test here. You go to the best school you can get into. It doesn't have to be hype. No matter what school you go to, because even in schools that aren't super highly ranked, if you do really well, you can excel. Now, I worship God. I don't worship money. But I had a negative 36, and it stinks. It stinks when you go out with your friends and you simply can't buy the next round, or you're sitting there thinking, oh my God, how am I going to pay this bill? The 5 of us are splitting it. Well, again, I'm not your dad, but there was a time in my early 30s, because I had borrowed this money to go back to school. I wasn't gambling. I took a bet on myself and it ended up working out okay. I actually had to, I want to say, curtail my social life. I had to say, look, I can't go with you to the restaurant. I'd love to meet you. Maybe we both make our own lunch or something. In my case, something super inexpensive. We meet someplace and we talk, or we walk, or we sit in the park, or we meet someplace for coffee. And by the way, I'll give you some advice. It's probably not Starbucks. It's probably nothing against Starbucks. I don't particularly care for it, but someplace less expensive. You'd be surprised at how small amounts of money add up. In fact, I used to take my paycheck, and I just told you to receive it, back in the old days, in the way, way old days. There was no choice with the Army. You got your paycheck in your hand, you went and cashed it. And I used to take some of the cash and I deposit it in the bank, but I would take some of the cash and I put it into envelopes. And I wrote Monday to Friday, Saturday and Sunday. That might seem really strange to you, but that was a really, really clear way to say, this is what I'm living on this week or this weekend. I simply cannot exceed it. I cannot use my credit card to exceed it. And what I call the dark years, the poor years for Dave, when I was in my, early mid 30s, I don't know if you know what generics are. If you go buy cornflakes and you see a picture of Tony the Tiger, or maybe that's Frosted Flakes, generics is sort of the same thing. It's just not pretty. It's probably not made with the same high quality. Would be angry if I said that. And it might be like a white box with black letters, block letters that say cornflakes. And if a box of cornflakes costs $4.79, the generic version might cost $1.59 or something like that. I'm not telling you what to do, but I'm suggesting that if you are in debt, if you have credit card debt, if you if you have a negative net worth, if you are spending more than you are earning each paycheck, I don't know what to tell you, but one way to do it is just tighten up your boots, put your mouthpiece in, and get your house in order. Pay that credit card debt off. It is not deductible. It magnifies, it grows at a gigantic percentage. It is just simply cancerous. It is very bad. Do not let that, you just on a monthly basis, you simply have to live within your means, and you want to save for the future so you can buy a home. Maybe you're going to get married. You have to buy a car. Emergencies come up. Okay, things like this. So, um, so I said that I opened up, and if you're looking at the slide here, revise your budget frequently. You have to spend less than your net income, and your first bill is the bill where you deposit money into your investments. And you simply might need to cut back. You might have to eat generic cereal. You might have to socialize a little less. You might not be able to go to movies. If you go on vacation, you might have to do so on an economy. Stay in the discount hotel versus the fancy hotel. Eat at someplace more modest, and maybe you know. I like to ski. There was about a 7-year period I didn't ski. And when I did ski, I went with coupons and discount and this and that. In fact, in my wallet right now, I have a bunch of coupons for CVS and all these stores and AAA, Automobile Club and everything else. So I don't pay for any service that provides discounts unless I am earning more discount than the fee for the service. And in most cases, I'm earning 5, 10 times what it cost me. And then, of course, stores, they encourage you to come to their store more often. There's no fee for those kind of cards. So what do we have here? We have gross income. Gross income is what you get paid by your job. Typically, and that's not a rule, but typically it'd be every 2 weeks. Some people get paid quarterly. Net income, though, is the income that you receive after deductions. And some of those deductions might include federal tax, state tax, depending on what state you live in, FICA, which is Social Security, certainly your health benefits, which depends on if it's yourself or a family. And what you really want to do is you want to also deduct before you receive your net income. You want to deduct or contribute to your company's 401k plan if they have one, or similar, like if you're a public sector worker or something like that. And especially, 401k money, okay, this is pre-tax money. So you invest it before it's taxed. So imagine you were paid $100 and you received 75 because they taxed 25. The government took 25. Then you're investing the 75. But with a 401k, you get to invest the entire $100 and it's not taxed until way in the future when you take it out. Right now, I think it's 59 and a half before you can touch it, but you can keep it in there till 72, or they're even increasing it even later than that. Um, Moreover, some companies take your 401k contribution and they match it, or they match a certain percent. Like, I think it's something like $24,500 is the maximum of your paycheck, which doesn't help if you're in 30,000, but if you earn enough, that's the maximum of your paycheck that you can say, don't give it to me now. Put it pre-tax into my 401k. And some companies will match the first 5%, um, or up to 5% of your paycheck, or 6% or 4%. It depends. So I really, really would hope that you could try, and you should really, really try to maximize the complete permissible amount for the 401k every year, as much as you can do, depending on what you get paid. However, even if you can't do the maximum amount, please do the maximum amount that your company will match. So at least you can get that advantage. Um, there's other things like other kinds of health spending accounts. There's things like healthcare spending accounts where you can deduct pre-tax dollars, or I shouldn't say deduct, you can withhold pre-tax dollars to be used for specific health expenses through your company's health plan. And depending on the health plan that you have, you might have a health spending account, and there's just different accounts. Okay. So you might say to yourself, what do I care? I'm just going to budget this and I'll just kind of figure this out. Granted, it's 2022, but back in 2009, Sports Illustrated did an article, and 78% of NFL and 60% of NBA players faced possible bankruptcy within several years of retiring. It doesn't mean they're stupid. It means they were making so much money that they thought, wow, it's just never going to end. And, they just didn't slow down their spending, or maybe they spent too much. Now, as much as you read about that, there's a fellow, I think he played football at Penn or something, and he's in the NFL right now, and he teaches financial literacy, and he doesn't come from a very fancy background, just like me. And he talks about, he teaches people financial literacy, and he teaches people about the importance of saving and this and that. So also education. This is, I'm sure we're talking to a broad audience here, a variety of backgrounds, a variety of occupations and compensations, and this and that. Maybe some are active duty, some are getting out. You can't go to school forever, but I do think that if you are looking at this slide, the greater that your education, or the higher level you're at, I like to say, create conditions under which something good can happen. And what I mean by that is, take steps that enable you or position you and give you a greater probability that the outcome that you seek will occur. Things like getting good schooling. And again, this is not a status symbol for the school you go to. Get into the best school you can get into, but no matter what school you get into, excel. Try to get A's, try to be in clubs. And also, from a budgeting point of view, save your money. Just save your money. Okay. So having a map, which is what a budget is, it substantially increases the chance that you're going to have a plan, a successful plan that you can execute successfully, and that you'll get the outcome that you want. There's a book, Og Mandino, OG, and the last name is Mandino. He's a philosopher, and he's written a number of philosophy or kind of motivation books. Philosophy is not really the right word. And one book is called The Richest Man in Babylon. And it's not about being a rich guy and buying helicopters. It's about somebody, it's a fictional story, but it's about somebody who was in financial straits. It was a disaster. And he talked to them about saving 10%. Some people say even saving 20% of your income. That's the first thing you do. And when you're sitting there saying, should I buy Cheerios or some fancy cereal? Should I go to a movie? Should I buy this? Should I buy that? Do not use a credit card. do not use a credit card. The rule on a credit card is you can use it to your heart's delight, gain all the points, all the frequent points you want. The only condition is you must pay it off in full each month. If you cannot pay it off in full each month, I don't want to insult you and have you send me hate mail. You don't deserve to use a credit card. You simply should not use a credit card. I would tell you to shred it, but you just might want to stick it in your drawer just in case you absolutely had to need it for some reason. But again, if you save the cash, use the credit card to get the points and then paid the bill off in full, you're in pretty good shape. So you simply can't do it because credit card debt is often the balance that you owe often grows at some heinous, horrible percentage, like 10, 15, 16%. So when we talk about budgeting and when we talk about investing, which we're going to do next session, which happens to be tomorrow, 4 p.m. Eastern, but when we talk, it's called savings and investments. It's part 5. When we talk about budgeting, think of it like buckets, okay? So picture in your mind, 4, 5, 6 buckets. Picture your paycheck is a water pail. When you get that water pail full of water, and that's your paycheck, whether it's once every 2 weeks, once a month, once every quarter, take that water and fill each one of them buckets up a little bit, depending on your personal circumstances. Now, I can't tell you which order to fill them buckets in, but here are the buckets. The first bucket that you have to fill, and maybe you're 18 or maybe you're 25 or maybe, you're coming out of a marriage or something, or you're getting into a marriage, or maybe you have kids, whatever your situation is. You take your budget, okay, and you have the expenses. Take the average for the year. The reason I say average is because, like, maybe the insurance bill is due every 3 months. Maybe the heating bill is higher in the winter. Take the average number, the average monthly out of pocket. This is after taxes, the out of pocket expense, and multiply that by 6. That is your emergency fund. That emergency fund exists so you don't get in a pickle if you lose your job or something bad happens or you get hurt. And maybe you have workers' comp or you only get covered for a couple weeks, or there's a whole bunch of things that are really bad that can happen that hopefully they won't happen, but it's a possibility. We learned in the military, prior planning prevents poor performance. I left one word out of there, right? So you need to do it. And that's the first bucket. And that's 6 months worth of expenses. If you're in the government, whether you're in the service or the TSA or some kind of federal job or government job, every once in a while, the government gets into a little argument, and they can't enact their budget. So, they run out of money and they stop paying people. Granted, it doesn't happen too often. Now, my father, after World War II, he worked for the subway for 37 years. I think 2 different times. Once was major. The union went on strike. Had nothing to do with him. Guy wanted to keep working. But guess what? When he goes on strike, the Lilco or the lighting company, they don't say, well, that's fine. We're going to leave you okay. We're not going to make you pay your bill for a while. And you want to eat? Well, you're still going to buy the food. The food store doesn't care if you're out of work. So you take your buckets. The first bucket is your emergency fund. The second bucket is short-term needs. And by the way, this is very correlated to how you invest, because the shorter term the money need is, the more conservative the investment needs to be. People talk about, well, we're going to talk about this tomorrow, but they talk about, where do I invest my money? It's got to do with asset allocation, which is apportioning your investments in accordance with the horizon, which is the time until which you need them, overlaid by your risk tolerance, which is personal for everyone. Anyway, the second bucket is short term. Money you're going to need in 1 to 4 years, 1 to 3 years. I mean, think about that. Maybe you're going to buy a car, or maybe you're going to get married, or you're looking to move into a bigger apartment. I mean, just think of things you might want to spend in 1 to 3 years. Then there's a medium term. Notice I write 3 to 10 years versus 1 to 4 years because they sort of overlap. This is not like a strict rule. It's a context. Okay, short term, medium term. What's long term? 10 to 30 years. And then I have another bucket for retirement. Why did I do that? Because 10 to 30 years, maybe you're 18. I don't know when you're going to buy your first house, but it might occur 10 years later. Or, maybe you're 18 again, and it's not up to me to tell you when you're going to get married, but maybe in your mind, you say, gee, I'm going to go to college. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. I'm going to meet somebody, I hope. Maybe you'll be 26, 30 before you have a family. I don't know. But just bucket it that way. And then I put a retirement bucket in there, which if you're 60 and you're listening to this, I'm thinking the long-term bucket will cover you. I hope you don't die by the time you're 90, but it's less of a, retirement is nearer for you. So you take these buckets and just visualize this, because that's how I like to think. I hope it works for you. Take these buckets and line them up. Take your paycheck, and when you get your paycheck, apportion some money into each of these buckets, and I submit to you the emergency fund should get filled up pretty soon. So what you do, it's like a water flow. You take this money. Now, when you get your paycheck, obviously you have to pay your expenses. But remember, I told you take 10 or as much as 20% of your paycheck. Say you get paid, I don't know, $2,000 every 2 weeks, or say it's 2,500. And after taxes, 2,000. I don't know what the number is going to be. So now you got the 2,000. It would be ideal if you could take $400 of that 2,000 every 2 weeks and apportion it amongst these buckets. Okay. And by the way, once the emergency fund bucket is filled, then it's filled, unless your expenses go higher, which you can tweak it up. It'll be easier to do once it's filled. Then you put the money in the other investments, okay? And we'll talk about saving investments, but the short-term bucket gets invested differently than the medium term, than the long term, than the retirement term. But let's go back. Every 2 weeks, you earn $2,500, which is $2,000 net of tax, right? You take $400, which is 20%, and you put that into your investments, which is these buckets I'm telling you about. By the way, you can do more than you want. But what does that implies? That your bills do not exceed $1,600. I sure hope they don't. And if your bills are like $1,400, then take 600 instead of 400. Take 500. Leave yourself 100 slack. But let's go to this next page here, which is the only other page we have. So what I write here, that picture. I'm sorry. Look like that. So here's your monthly income. You reduce it by taxes and deductions like 401k, healthcare spending, and stuff like this. Covers your expenses, preferably with some leftover. So your monthly expenses, your net income after taxes, minus your expenses, there's a leftover. You try to save 10% or as much as 20%. And then we go into our buckets. You accumulate, I wrote 3 to 6 months. Let's just say 6 months of expenses. You accumulate your medium, long term. You got your buckets, you invest leftover. So look to the right side of this page, please. So this is a drill. Please do this. This is a drill. Please do this. Take your money, your after-tax money, whether it's monthly or bi-monthly each week, and put it above the line here, above the box there. Take 10, 15, 20%. Well, actually, what are you doing? How much are you saving? Enter it there. Enter your housing, food, clothing. And this is, like I said, every 2 weeks, every month, whatever it happens to be. Okay. And the first number, the savings number, do what you're currently doing. And maybe it's zero. I hope not. Maybe it is. And then enter all them other numbers and then subtract them. Okay. So you add up your expenses and subtract them, including the savings. I think I might have just made a mistake. The savings is a negative number too, because it's being paid from your paycheck. It's a positive number in your life, but it is a deduction. So take your paycheck and subtract all of these items. Okay. If it's not a positive number, if you don't have something left over, then go to work on the revision column. First of all, the first thing would be, if you can, and we all kind of want to earn more money, and that's not something you can control immediately. However, maybe you're a wage person and you could add a couple of hours in each week, not like 20, but a couple of hours. Or maybe like my father, if he worked at night or weekends, or there's some hourly shifts that give you time and a half, or maybe you can become a foreman or something. Try to increase your income, but that's something you work on as soon as you can. But what you do immediately, like immediately, you try to revise these categories. First of all, if the savings is zero, then try to make it 10 or 20% of your paycheck. And what school says is that you take the gross paycheck, not the net paycheck. What's gross? We said you made 2,500 each 2 weeks, which was 2,000 after tax. Actually, if you really want to be letter to the law, you should take 10 or 25% of that gross amount. But let's just worry about getting a savings amount. So you take that savings amount, if it's zero or whatever it is, make it something. Housing, well, a single person is a little more flexible than somebody with 6 kids and 3 dogs. That's your business. But if you are spending more than you are earning, I would try kind of like right away. Maybe you get a roommate, or you go to someone's place and you say, how much would you charge me to live with you? Whatever. Food, I kind of think you can change that right away. I mean, even if you have a family, I mean, again, I don't have the violin out. I'm not trying to be sad here. When I was a kid, I hated steak. I said, geez, I don't know what the big deal is about steak, because we ate it very rarely. And whenever we ate it, it tasted like a hockey puck. I only realized later, when I got older, that even though we had food on the table, we were skinny. We didn't have very much money. In fact, when I was around 11 years old, there was a period of there for a year or 18 months where we lived paycheck to paycheck. Like we were hosed. We had to get the paycheck to pay the bills. Like we were tight to try to pay our bills. So on food, I don't want you to eat steak that tastes like a hockey puck, but you just might have to tighten it up and go to generics like I did for a while. Clothing, I'm not a fancy guy. I don't dress in fancy clothes. That is an incredibly unimportant part of my budget. But you're allowed to have it however you want. But if you really need to tighten up your budget, maybe you can cut back. Entertainment, I already told you. I said to my friends at that point, I'm not going to meet you out. I'll love to meet you. We'll sit on a bench. We'll go for a walk. I mean, your friends are going to understand that. Transportation, I mean, you could try things like carpool. You could try things like public transportation. Utilities, some people with the heating bill, you just, kind of turn it down a little bit and wear an extra sweater. Or, in the air conditioning, you don't make it so cold. You just make sure it's not like, like a boiler room. If you have to turn the air conditioner on, or use a fan, or open a window or something. Cable, internet, get rid of the premium channels. You can figure this out. Cell phone, look for the most economical plan. Cut your data usage, things like this. Student loan, well, these days the government, of course, is helping people out, either telling them they can delay it or whatever. Personally, I paid my debt off. I made that my highest priority because my father taught me to pay my debts, and I just didn't want to be in debt. So that was I aimed my money at that. So we're about done here. The message. Oh well, actually, we said what you currently are, and then we revise it in actual. Don't focus on the words. The point is, hack this up, print this off, do 5, 6, 7 revisions of it, write your paycheck, the amount of money you receive above the box here. Okay. And take your paycheck and look at what you're currently doing, and then revise it until you get it where you want it to be. Where you want it to be is to save 10, as much as 10 or even 20% of your money, and then roll that money into those buckets right here, into the emergency fund, short-term, medium-term, and long-term retirement. And we're going to talk about that in the next session on savings and investments. You have to save first. You have to save first. You have to save first, because there's very few occupations that are going to pay a pension to you. Some will, but there's very few that will. And there's unexpected medical costs, and you might want to have some fun when you retire. So living skinny, spending so much money, or that such that even if you can pay your bills, but you're not saving, you're just going to cause yourself a problem later. Just save the money. And if you have extra money, give it to your family or donate it. I mean, people will take it. What you really want to do is you want to accumulate a savings such that when you retire, you can retire without worrying about things. So that is it. If anyone has any questions, feel free. And if not, I believe we're gonna stop this now, and I'll talk to you all tomorrow on savings and investments. Thank you.